Hey everybody, it's the dude here, back at last to bring you another video. This is one that I've been looking forward to doing for a very long while now. And with Game of Thrones Season 7 coming out, there has never been a better time to deal with one of the biggest controversies in Game of Thrones. Lady Stoneheart. One of the many characters that is featured in the A Song of Ice and Fire book series written by George R.R. Martin, but has been cut out of the HBO TV series Game of Thrones. I won't go any further without a formal spoiler warning. Game of Thrones is one of the greatest pieces of fantasy, and I would never want to ruin one of the most intriguing elements to anyone who does not want to know. So if you have not read books 1 through 5, there will be major spoilers for the Catelyn, Jaime, and Brienne storylines. I will also be talking about all things TV shows, so if you haven't seen up to the end of this past season, Season 6, please stop watching now. With that, let's get to why Game of Thrones really cut Lady Stoneheart, or as I like to call it, the Jaime Lannister death theory. So, about 2/3 of the way through Book 3, A Storm of Swords, and at the end of Season 3 of HBO's Game of Thrones, King of the North Robb Stark and his mother, Catelyn Stark, are betrayed and killed by the Freys after Robb chose love over duty. Classic. Robb's head was cut off, replaced by his wolf's head, and Catelyn's body was thrown into the river. And in the show, at least, that's all she wrote. The Red Wedding happened in the traditional biggest episode of the season, episode 9. And in the next episode, episode 10, there was no mention of her body. There wasn't even an after-credits scene like I'm sure many of us book fans were hoping for. Because in the books, there is much more. In the epilogue of Book 3, we read from the point of view of a Frey, the brother of the Frey who slit Catelyn Stark's throat. He gets captured and hung in the woods by the Brotherhood Without Banners. This was the group that was originally sent out by Ned Stark in Season and Book 1 to hunt down the mountain. They turned rogue after the Lannisters betrayed the Starks. They're led by the Lightning Lord, Beric Dondarrion, the guy who's been brought back to life over and over by Thoros of Myr, the Red Priest. All of this was established in and throughout Season 3, before the Red Wedding. In the books, the Brotherhood is now hanging these Freys under the guise of a new leader, a reanimated Catelyn Stark. Her neck's still cut, the skin under her eyes has been clawed off. She has Robb's crown, and she wants revenge. Apparently, she was too far from death for Thoros the Red Priest to bring her back to life. So Beric Dondarrion gave her the kiss of life, giving his life to hers and finally dying his last death. So, in Books 4 and 5, the common folk of Westeros have taken to calling this reanimated Catelyn Stark Lady Stoneheart, as she travels the land killing Lannisters and Freys. But the show never mentioned it. And then for 3 more seasons I was patiently waiting for them to finally reveal her. 'Cause honestly, it's just so cool. Catelyn's death was one of the hardest that I've ever had to see on the screen and read in a book. And for her to be in books undead and getting revenge is just, is fucking perfect. So, the question is, why did they cut it? Let's talk about a couple other things first. Catelyn Stark's journey is one that primarily starts when Jaime Lannister pushes her son Bran out of the tower window. She then fights the assassin, who has Tyrion's dagger, then she kidnaps Tyrion, and takes him to her sister. This causes Joffrey to kill Ned. That, along with being, a total prick. Then Catelyn is very lost, and makes a huge decision. She meets Brienne of Tarth, who has her own thing going on, but sends her with a captured Jaime to get her daughters Arya and Sansa back. For the rest of the series, the Jaime and Brienne plots are linked because of Catelyn. She forced those stories. For the rest of the time, Brienne always thinks and acts because of Jaime, and Jaime is forever changed by their journey and friendship. But Catelyn doesn't know anything about that. She never gets her daughters back and dies before finding out what happened with Jaime and Brienne. Boy, that's a recipe for a ghost if I ever heard one. And then, lastly, right before Catelyn dies, as her son is killed, what does his killer say? Well, in the books and show, it's a little bit different. In the show, it's, "The Lannisters send their regards." In the books, the line is instead, Jaime Lannister sends his regards. This is massive for Catelyn's story. On the surface, her story begins and ends with her thinking that Jaime Lannister is the source of all of her problems. She should and does blame him for the fate of all 5 of her children. So, in the books and the show, Jaime and Brienne get to King's Landing to find both Sansa and Arya gone. And Jaime sends Brienne with his sword Oathkeeper to find Arya and Sansa. In the show, on Brienne's journey, she kills the Hound and Stannis and ends up finding Sansa. Quite a tale. In the books, however, something completely different happens. Brienne is pitter-pattering around the Riverlands with Podrick Payne, getting led all over, but then is attacked by these men. These B characters, well, not even B characters, like D characters who have been set up for a while in a couple other people's stories. One of them, this guy named Biter, literally bites Brienne's, face off. But right before she dies, she's saved by none other than the Brotherhood Without Banners. And they take her to, of course, our personal favorite, Lady Stoneheart. Catelyn, who croaks out of a hole in her neck, blames Brienne for not finding her daughters. And to make up for this, she tells Brienne that she has to kill Jaime Lannister. And Brienne's like, shit. Because the whole book, she's kind of been slowly falling in love with Jaime Lannister because he's replacing Renly, who she always loved. And Catelyn says, pick the noose or the sword. At this point, her love and affection for Jaime is at its peak, so of course she says, I can't do that. So in almost no time, they hang her. And that is the end of Brienne's story. Man, when I read that, I really couldn't fathom it not being in this show. It was just so great for Brienne to die with honor, choosing, like Robb Stark did, love over duty. Classic. That was at the end of book 4. Now, book 5 came out 5 real-world years later. And at the end of that book, Jaime gets a few chapters. He's also roaming around the Riverlands, talking to a bunch of Lannisters we've never met. And then, out of nowhere, into his tent comes Brienne. She's all fucked up, her neck's messed up now, and she's like, Jaime, I know where Sansa is. The Hound has her. I can show you where she is, but you have to come by yourself or else he said he'd kill her. That is the end of the Jaime story in book 5. We've been cliffhangered on that for another 5 years, desperately waiting for book 6. But let's think about what Brienne's saying. The Hound has Sansa, come alone. Oh boy. At this point, the readers know where Sansa is, still at the Eyrie, poor thing. And we know that the Hound has been presumed dead for a long time, his helmet being used by somebody else. He's currently working as a grave digger with some Septons, no doubt preparing to fight his brother the Mountain in Clegane Bowl. Clegane Bowl. And we also know that Brienne has seen Lady Stoneheart. The last thing we read in her chapter in book 4 is that as she's being hung, she shouts a word. And it's only implied that this word was sword, meaning that she is taking the task that Lady Stoneheart has given her to kill Jaime Lannister. So, it's seemingly obvious that Brienne is here to lead Jaime into a trap, where he'll finally get to face Catelyn Stark. These 3 characters' story, Catelyn, Brienne, and Jaime, have all been leading up to this one moment that still, as fans of the show and book, has not been shown to us. But we do know one thing, that this is most definitely not going to happen in the show. In this last season, they not only gave us Beric Dondarrion, who if Lady Stoneheart was alive would be dead, and then they gave us the Hound, who proceeded to pee into the river where Catelyn's body should come out of. The show is clearly not going in this direction. Here's what I'm thinking. When they started the TV series, George R.R. Martin reportedly told the showrunners how the story was going to end. So anytime the show has ever changed something from the books, I've always been very aware of it, and at every instance I've wondered why. The Jaime Lannister sends his regards line. This Lady Stoneheart confrontation with Brienne and Jaime. If the showrunners don't like the Lady Stoneheart idea, it stands to mean that it is building to something that the showrunners don't want to build to. It all seems to be giving Show Jaime a very different end. So here's the big question. What is the Lady Stoneheart plot building to in the books? And at the same time, what is the Jaime story building to in the show? Both of these things, I think, must be different for them to feel the need to cut out one of my most favorite elements from the book series. Everybody with me? Because we're just getting started. There's a popular Jaime Lannister death theory that you may have heard of that has to do with his sister, Cersei. When Cersei was a child, she got to ask 3 questions to a woods witch and have her fortune told, basically. The witch predicted that Cersei wouldn't marry Rhaegar Targaryen, but would marry someone else, Robert. She then predicted how many children Robert would have versus how many children Cersei would have, and that her children would each die after being crowned king or queen, which didn't really work out in the show, because Myrcella died before she was actually crowned. But in the books, this still might happen. Little Cersei clarifies and asks if she'll be queen, and the Woods Witch says, "Yes, but then another will come, younger, more beautiful, and she'll take everything away that you hold dear." When Cersei grew up, she believed that this was Margaery, this beautiful young queen. Though it's possible what this prophecy is in reference to is actually Brienne, who is going to take Jaime away from her, everything that Cersei holds dear. And then after all that, the Woods Witch goes one step further and predicts Cersei's death. She says that in the end, the Valonqar will strangle the life out of her. Cersei later learns that Valonqar is the word for little brother in High Valyrian, or Old Valyrian, or Valyrian. These predictions have directly influenced Cersei's life. They led her to mistrust her husband Robert, and later Margaery, be overprotective towards her children, and truly hate her little brother Tyrion. Most people think that the prediction actually refers to Jaime killing Cersei, not Tyrion. Jaime, who is technically the younger of the 2 twins. Many times in the series, the 2 characters have joked that they came into the world together and they'd like to leave it together. It all sounds great, perfect, tightly sealed in a box of predictability. But I don't think that's the story that George R.R. Martin is telling. His story is not going to end with all the prophecies coming true, the war being won, and the rightful heir to the throne getting the throne. If there's one thing that his series has made abundantly clear, is that prophecies, war, and bloodlines are what pull everybody apart. They are the evil in this world. The whole Stannis story is a metaphor for how prophecies don't really exist. The throne is not going to go to somebody because of their blood. I think Tyrion's going to become king because he's the best leader, and he's not going to be half Targaryen either. But that's another conversation. I think that in the books, Jaime Lannister is going to die because of Lady Stoneheart. I think that's what it's been building to. I think the only reason to bring Catelyn back to life is so she can get this revenge on him. I think he might die in a trial by combat against Brienne or possibly the Hound. Maybe even while Cersei is dying on the other side of the world. I think they will both die at the same time, but not together. Jaime Lannister started as a character who was a fighter. He was meant to fight all of Tyrion's trial by combats, but was never there to do so. After he lost his hand, there was so much self-doubt in him. He didn't know whether or not he would even be able to fight ever again. I feel like his whole story has been building to this final trial. This battle where he'll finally answer for his crimes. And don't get me wrong, I don't actually love this ending. I think it's bittersweet. To the reader, Jaime has made this whole arc and has won over the audience as a good, strong character. So it would be really tragic for him to have made all this growth and to still die. But how is he supposed to get out of this situation with Lady Stoneheart? One option is that Brienne is taking him halfway, but is so in love with him that she never ends up taking him there, and they never have this confrontation. But that would kind of suck, because I really want Catelyn to get the resolution. Again, why bring her back to life if she's not going to see Jaime Lannister again? Why make her think that he is completely responsible for Robb's death in her last scene if she's not going to see him again? So let's say Brienne in the books does take Jaime there. How could he get out of this situation? Most people who like the idea of Jaime strangling Cersei, but also read the books and know that Jaime's about to be set up, think, well, maybe he talks to Stoneheart's like, hey, I'm a good guy now. Send me back to King's Landing with Brienne. We'll stroll in there and we'll kill Cersei. I wouldn't believe that. Lady Stoneheart's not gonna believe that. She was gonna kill Brienne just on principle. There is no way she lets Jaime out of her grasp if he gets there. And I think for the Catelyn story, Jaime has to get there. So, in the books, Jaime Lannister's gonna die in front of, maybe not at the hands of, Catelyn Stark. And what I think is that the showrunners heard that. George told them that 5, 6, 7 years ago now, and they were like, oh, and Jon Snow dies, and Daenerys doesn't become leader? Well, okay, we'll think about it. We'll do your story for about 3 books, line for line. But then we're gonna start changing a bunch of stuff. I think that they think it's just too great of a story for Jaime to strangle Cersei for them to not do it. There is no doubt that the two mediums are heading in different directions, with the goal of doing different things. And bear in mind, this is just the explanation that I have come up with for the strange omission of one of the coolest and affecting characters that I've ever been exposed to. But we won't know for sure until The Winds of Winter comes out, and or the next 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. We only have 15 episodes left. And if the trailers are anything to judge by, which they most certainly are, it seems that Daenerys, after stopping at Dragonstone, is immediately going to go to King's Landing. So if I was to put money on it, I would say at the end of this season, Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister are going to die. Until then, I hope I have given you something to think about. If you like what you saw here, please give me a like and subscribe for more Game of Thrones videos. Please don't forget to comment, because how else am I going to know what you think? And honestly, I really want to know what each and every one of you think. After I release a video, all I want is to read comments, whether they're good or bad, other theories or terrible ideas. So please don't feel shy. I want to hear what you have to say. Okay, that has been all for me. This has been The Dude. See ya.